The Passionate Leader, because leadership without passion is just a title.
Meeting. We got a collapse in the garage. Get the squad back coming in here. We got an I-beam gone to a firefighter.
Get that out. Urgent. Transmit a second along.
This is where titles end and leadership begins. Ask yourself, what do you do when the fire service starts confusing real struggle with excuses? How do we talk honestly about PTSD without pretending every tough moment is a ticket for retirement or a way out? And how do we build a culture where accountability and support can exist in the same room? In the second half of our conversation with Dennis Carradin, he helps us cut through the noise. We dig into the truth behind the PTSD retirement debate and why some people see it as a cop out while others really know the story. We talk about where he practices, who he serves, and why mentorship matters now more than ever. This is about culture shift, not the buzzword version, the real world version. The one that happens when leaders stop tiptoeing around hard topics and start teaching, guiding, and setting the tone for the next generation. In our conversation, Dennis reminds us that you can support your people and still expect them to stand tall. You can care about the job and still demand accountability. And you can lead with compassion without lowering the standard. I've spoken enough. It's time to get to part two right now on The Passionate Leader. Are you able to practice in all states, or are there? I won't necessarily list out the states that you can't, but I mean, we have a pretty big reach between both of our platforms, and I'm sure that we will. So even if somebody that is not in a location that you are able to service, are they still able to reach out to you and stuff like that?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Perfect.
I see people, and it really depends if they wanna use an EAP, if they wanna use insurance,
Gotcha.
if they wanna just pay cash, or, if we're just doing it as a scholarship thing, is that, I see pro bono as well, depending on the
Cool.
situation.
Yep.
I have it's funny, I maintain, several different, locations just by, this wonderful little thing that we're on called Zoom, it's
Exactly.
there's these great platforms that you don't have the limitations that we used to have. Like,
Mm,
when I go on a crisis response, it could be anywhere in the world or in the country, um, and when I'm going there, people will ask, "Well, do you have anybody here?" And that's how we started with 41 being in 41 states, is that I started vetting out people anytime I went somewhere
awesome.
with
Yeah.
crisis response, and I was like, "Okay, well, okay, we're in, Nowheresville, Montana, like, who can we find?" And then we would find somebody. New Hampshire be, one of them,
Sure. Yeah.
for a response there, and we have, like, 20, 25 clinicians that we could refer to in New Hampshire.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, it's a labor of love, but you almost prepare yourself for that question, you
Sure.
know,
Sure. Yeah.
where's the reach? And it's like it's everywhere. What the other funny thing is that, like any good first responder, you never sleep. You love
Yep. Yep.
caffeine, you
Yep.
just help people. And but to go back to the apparatus thing, it's funny. It's like when I look at it, and every now and then I'll hear the woo-woos and the ding-dings go by, and man, I get a little smile on my face. I'm not gonna that
Yeah.
Yeah, when somebody says, "Well, they just retired on PTSD because they didn't wanna ride the trucks anymore." No, I will
Right.
constantly be that five-year-old that stepped on a Wilmington, Delaware fire truck for the first time in my life at 5, and somebody put a helmet on, and whatever
Yeah.
firefighter did that to me messed me up for the rest of my life because now I really like it. So, no, I would reject that. I would tell them and again, hit them at the knee.
Yeah.
No, nobody wants to have PTSD because PTSD is like cancer. There is no cure to it, and it
Exactly.
comes
Yeah.
back, you know? No. No,
And
the other night we had an accident. It's a terrible story, but it was awesome. We had an accident on the I-95 out here, Newark, Delaware. It was like a 7-car pileup, and I was
man.
a caged tiger. I was like, "Oh my god, what I would do on s."
No, that's the thing. I think that's why I've learned. I think one of my more favorite phrases now is that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So when somebody says something, before I used to, maybe it's because I am getting a little longer in the tooth, but I used to think it, and now more of my thoughts are coming out before I can catch. So, but sometimes that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But you have to have those conversations. So a perfect transition into one of the first questions I actually brought up or wanted to bring up was, you did mention you got back into the service for a little bit when you were practicing. Did you ever find that was really hard to kind of juggle being active in the service and, I mean, because I get, the way I look at it is I can call a plumber to have him come do something in my house, right? But if I got a guy on the fire department who's like the plumber, I'm gonna call him before. So did you ever kind of run into instances like that where it's like, yeah, maybe we're a little too close and I gotta boot you to somebody else who's a little, disconnected from the situation or
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's funny, and my iteration of my early life with my, so just to give you my little bit of background, I have two older children. So
okay, yep.
my two oldest are 28 and 24, and I know what I did during COVID because I have a 4-year-old, right? She's my buddy. She is absolutely my little buddy, but my kids knew me very, very active in the fire
Yep,
service.
yep.
They were a part of it. Neither one of them ever got into it, but they learned very much through me about volunteerism and charity and so forth, but they also
Mm,
understood there was always gonna be boundaries, is that it
sure.
was always family first, and I would do my best to do it. So, the days that I could, would go over. I never got paid for it. I didn't get it. I never accepted pay as an EMT. It was always, to me, a volunteer because of that nobility to it.
Yeah.
But with that said, is that, and you probably know this just as much as I do, that after an incident or after whatever, when a firefighter wants to see you as a patient to a therapist, they don't want to go to anybody else. And if
Hmm.
I say no, and they're not going to anybody. So we've
Yep,
run
yep.
into it a little bit, over the years of, hey, this might be a little too close, or it might not be. Let's just do this more as crisis, debriefing, or as crisis
Yeah, yeah,
management
yeah.
under that versus true therapy, and you kind of work with it. But I've absolutely enjoyed that role because people saw me and knew, like, okay, he knows his stuff. I have a
Right, right.
funny one. We got banged out for, a guy, chest pains, possible, heart attack, and went down to a a nice area of Delaware, and, went in to get this guy to transport him to the hospital. And when I got in there, I looked, and my eyebrow raised because I knew his wife and I knew
Yep.
him, who was one of my private patients, and I
Okay.
and he goes, "Wow." He goes, "You're" he said, "You're saving my mental health and you're saving my life." And I was like, "Oh, I haven't saved anything yet, but let's get you back up and go." And so I think it depends on the community that you're in.
Sure.
Delaware's
Yeah.
tiny. We know everybody. We're either related or we dated each other somehow. So, but I've had those incidents where I've been on the fire truck or
Sure.
in the ambulance and have seen my private patients, and I never I y everything's sacred to me in that sense, and I'll
Sure.
take
Yeah.
your secrets to the grave, but it's always funny when I could give the triage nurse their entire life history that they don't wanna know, but I'm
Right,
saying,
right.
and then their mother is very nice, and the father, and they're like, "What's the vital signs?" "Oh, that."
So I'll run into it because I do a lot of the fire code and life safety inspections in town. So just in fact, last week I was in my son plays hockey up about 45 minutes from here. So we're out of the area, so to speak. And in between games, we stop at like a local grocery store, and I cross paths with this individual. I'm like, oh, I've seen this person before. And of course, he walks up and he's like, "Hey, JP, how are you?" So now we're engaged. I'm like, "Oh boy, this could go one of a couple of different ways." So generally, the safest thing for me to do is to just go with the conversation. So of course we do, and we part ways. And my wife looks at me and she goes, "Who was that?" And I go, Babe, I have no idea. I haven't the foggiest idea. He looks familiar, so he's probably and it boils down to, I mean, I do, 700 to 1,000 inspections just by myself alone in a year. So I got really lucky. The individual actually popped into the house to the firehouse the other day, and he was renewing a burn permit. So of course, as soon as he leaves, because he pops into the office and he's like, "Oh, it's nice to see you actually, like, in the work." So of course I'm like, "Oh, here we go again." And so
Sure.
he leaves, and I run over to the administration's office, and I go, "What is the name on that permit?" So she goes, such and such, and I go, "Okay, good." She goes, "Why?" And I go, so I told her the story, and I'm like, now I'll remember his name. But it just happened, or that, or fire prevention, because we'll go to the school for fire prevention, and we are every kid's hero, and they'll remember Mr. JP, and I'm like, "Hey, I remember you guys too." And each visit can be upward, between anywhere from 30 to 300 kids, and I'm like, "I don't know you guys, but I remember you."
They are that you're leaving that absolute lasting impression on them, and that's like I said, I don't remember firefighter Mr. Firefighter in 5th
Sure.
grade, but or when I was 5, but it left that lasting impression on me,
Yeah.
I think it's cool. I've always said, if my name could get you out of something, please use it. If it, you
Right.
know, but
Yeah,
no,
name dropping is free, have at
you can
it.
have fun, funny story, and I'll tell you this one about that. I had, have a patient. We have, so I'm about 10 minutes where my office here is in Wilmington. I'm
Yep,
about
yep.
10 minutes away from Joe Biden. I'm, from our former
Okay.
so he
Sure,
lives in
sure.
Greenville area. So we talk about the garden variety, neurotic housewife from Greenville, which is a little well-to-do area and so forth. And I was seeing a woman, and she came into my office just pissed off at the world. And
Yep, yep.
and I've talked to her about the story, and she gives me the permission to tell it because she now
Sure,
thinks it's
sure.
funny. She came into my office, and she was banging her finger on my desk, and she said, "I need you to contact the head of the police in Delaware." And I was like, "The head of the, like, King police officer?" I was like,
Alright, what the hell's
I
that?
said, "Before I get myself in trouble, please tell me what's going on." She goes, "I know for a fact that there is a federal law." And I went, "Oh, here we come. There's a federal law that all law enforcement and firefighters and EMTs, after a phone call is made, they have to be at your house in under 6 minutes." I said, "I've never heard of that law, and nor do I think that I could potentially ever have it, but keep going, why?" And she goes, "Well, I was down at the Christiana Mall," so we have a big mall near us, "and
Yep,
I was
yep.
at Nordstrom's," and I was like, "Of course you were." And she said, "When I
Shock.
w" shocking, she said, "When I walked out, my car window was broken into." And I went, "Oh my God." I said, "Are you okay?" And she says, "Yes, I'm okay." And I said, "Did they do damage other than the window?" "No, they just broke the window and they took my change cup." Now, I wanted to give her a lecture about not having open change in the car no matter where you
Sure,
are,
sure, yep.
but I refrained. A little bit of a dick, but not that big of a dick, so I just
Yeah, yeah.
not gonna talk about that. So I said, "And then what happened?" She goes, "Well, then I called 911, and it took them 2.5 hours to get to me." And I said, "Was it raining?" She goes, "No, it was sunny." And I said, "Where were you?" And she goes, "Well, I went inside to Starbucks to get a, Mocha Frappuccino." And I was like, I said, "Wait a minute." I said, "Let me so you went inside, you were drinking your drink, car window was broken, nobody was injured or anything, and when that, which most likely was a state trooper, showed
Yeah.
up, did you yell at him or her?" "Well, I gave him a piece of my mind." And I was like, I said, "Was he professional?" "Well, he kept saying, 'Yes, ma'am, understand, ma'am,' and then he gave me the order." And I said, "So you okay." I said, "So I'm gonna tell you a little story here that's called triage." And she said, "Well, what's that?" And I said, "So there is no federal law that says they have to be there at 6 minutes." But I said, "That trooper, which the troop closest to there, I think would be Troop 2, probably got dispatched out and then eventually had to go to a car accident with injury, or maybe an officer was shot, was down, or there was a CPR in
Mm.
progress. or there was an actual burglary, and all of that triage that was happening is that that trooper had to go through all of those things before he showed up to you standing in the sun with nothing more than a broken window and maybe a bruised ego a little bit, and then you
Yeah.
yell at him. And then she goes, and pardon for the language, but I will use it.
Yeah.
She she goes, "So you're calling me an asshole?" And I said, "I didn't call you an asshole."
I love it. Yep.
I
Yep.
said, "You may have just called yourself an asshole." I said, "But I didn't call you an asshole." And I said, "And there is no head of the police." I said, "There is a colonel that's with the state troopers." And I said, "But I really don't wanna damage my reputation with them." So I get a phone call from one of the captains down at Troop 2, and this is like the next day, and he goes, "Dennis," he goes, "This is probably your doing." And I was like, "What do you mean it's my doing?"
Oh no, here we go.
He goes "We have enough food in here to possibly feed most of the residents of Delaware." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I had a woman stop down here apologizing left as right as she's bringing boxes and boxes of fresh made goods and all that stuff. And she just said, 'My
That's
therapist
awesome.
called me an asshole.'" So,
That is
yeah, I
fantastic.
people's impression and thoughts are a little different sometimes about what
Oh,
the fire service and first responders
yeah.
are.
And it's her feeling, and that's where I run into stuff a lot. It's if a truth that I'm saying rings true in your ears, I'm not calling you that, but it's an immediate self-reflection.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what I love, I love to you can it's I did it to somebody the other day, and I was like, but if it if what I said hurts you, that's a good thing. It means you're humble. It means you're able to actually. So it's a they're like, oh, he said I was a prick, but he also said I'm humble too. So he's a really like, what a nice
He
guy.
built me up and brought me down all at the same time. Yeah.
Amen. Yeah, yeah.
The funny part is that, you're in a world, in the first responder world. You figure if you look at the numbers, so right now we have roughly 380 million Americans, that are
Mm,
documented apparently.
sure.
Whoever
Right,
else,
right, right.
we could be up to 400 million, I wouldn't know, but
Yeah.
380 million Americans, right? If we break down the fire service, the police, and so forth, the numbers really don't
Mm,
number. The math doesn't math well. So you figure there are 1.1 million certified police officers. There is roughly 800,000 paid and volunteer firefighters. And then you break it down to EMTs, which is less than 75,000. Paramedics is
yeah.
less than 50,000. Now, in the world of mental health, there's 225,000 licensed therapists in the United States,
Mm,
of which less than 500, 482 to be almost precise, that specialize in first responder and healthcare worker care.
yep.
So our math doesn't math. And
Yeah.
so if people's perception of us is, if you look at, 1.1 million police officers out of 380 million people, that's 380 people for every one officer to
Yeah.
handle. And
Right,
then
right.
now at over 500 people for every firefighter to handle, you have 500 different opinions of what that one firefighter is. And it's
Yeah.
it's it's an insanity with the numbers.
No, such a valid point. I love it. Um, one of the questions I did want to ask, there was a recent post that a lot of my followers sent that you had made about the fire service, and it kind of talked about the psychology of why people don't volunteer as much as they used to. Um, I mean, I guess I wanted to kind of touch on that and really see where you were headed with that, and in what we can do collectively to sort of maybe right the ship, so to speak.
Go back to old school and just give them a helmet and some bunker gear and let them play, that's what it
Yeah,
comes.
yeah.
Well, I think there's a couple of things, and let's kinda look at it. As a whole, volunteerism is down, and I think that's, when I said the pandemic did not do us any favors, because what it did is made us work harder for less money.
Yep.
So the person that's putting in 8 hours a day isn't putting in 8 hours a day anymore. They're putting in 10, 11 hours a day.
Yeah, yeah.
And we also are in a society that if we have children, they're involved in 22 different activities that we have to bring them to and so forth. I thought at one point I was done with that, but now I have a 4-year-old and you know? So you have just our normal life right now. I was joking around with a patient earlier about just my life in general, about the price of things.
Yeah.
He said, "My 4-year-old loves 3 restaurants in our area," and I'll give
Mm.
them a shout because 'cause they're wonderful restaurants.
Sure,
But
sure.
one's V&M Bistro, it's in Wilmington. We're friends with the family, we love them. They're amazing people. They love my daughter to death, and so we
Yeah, yeah.
go in there you get that, courtesy little discount or whatever it is, but
Sure.
she's great. She's entertaining when she's in there, so that's one. Second one's La Porta in Glen Mills, another great family place, what have you. My daughter, who is a biotech major from Penn State,
Mm.
is weekends there as a bar manager, and we go in there, and Deanna's my daughter Deanna, the little one, is queen of the ball there, right? And so we get a big discount there, and then we go to this other place called PJ Willihan's. It's up in Newtown Square. We're on their little bar club, and
Sure.
the servers there fight to get my booth because of my daughter. This is
I love it.
so this little girl loves those 3 places. So when we go out, that's the place she wants, one of those 3, right? So
Sure.
I hadn't paid like normal prices for 4 years with this child, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I took her to a different place, just a place out in Westchester, PA. I took her out, and I sat down, and they gave me the bill, and I went, "How the hell did this happen?" So so we're looking at prices going up, people working harder, and people not having that time to volunteer. So that's number 1.
Yeah. Right.
Number 2, when I got into fire service, we had to take 4 weekend classes.
Mm.
We literally had to take, what was it? Structure, hazmat, we had to take, vehicle rescue and I don't know, poles and ladders. I forget what they were. We had to take
Sure.
4 weekend classes. Now, a volunteer basically is going into an academy, and
Mhm.
so the time that it takes to get the training is much longer, much more extensive. It's
Mm.
not just weekends, it's throughout the week, and then you have to get a certain number of hours, and I forget that it could be like 300 hours that you have to
Yeah, it's
get.
pretty close.
Yeah, and you're still not fighting fires. So you could be a volunteer, quote unquote volunteer, for a year and never ever put out a fire. So
Right.
when people look at that, you're looking at the cost analysis. This has taken all my time and I'm not having any of the fun. Why the hell would I want to be there? Now,
Mm.
those are just kind of built into it, right? Let's look at personality base, because this is where I think the fire service is really screwing themselves. Is that is somewhere along the line we forgot that we need to build community versus haze the younger kids. When you
Yeah.
have when you have people that have been there, done that, seen it and all that, it is your time to step up as a leader and step up as a mentor versus just make fun of kids that are trying to
Yep.
be in the fire service. And I've seen that time in and time out where I've had kids that have really wanted to be in the fire service, but they'll come back and say, "Wow, those guys were a bunch of dicks. I don't want to
Right,
hang
right.
out." So I think we definitely need a culture shift. Now people are going to yell at me for that and say the fire service
Oh,
been this
no.
blah blah blah. But there needs to be a culture shift. It should move from this hazing good boy, good old boy network type of thing to traditional education and positive leadership. Now, this is where I'm going to get my peers and older folks saying, "Well, we don't want a group of smacked asses in here or anything like that." That when we talk about positive leadership, that's not it. It's truthfully setting people up to understand that they can be successful in the fire
Mm.
service, that they can
Right,
be
right.
successful as volunteers or as paid or whatever it is, but you are also being welcomed. Like
Yeah.
but I don't wanna put in 5,000 hours into a volunteer service, and the only thing I get is a T-shirt and a high five. No,
Yes.
you know? Like, I
Preach. I
know,
love it.
when I was in, I had to buy all my uniform. I bought my Class A's, my Class B's, I bought them all.
Yeah.
Again, my practice supports, my charity habit, I guess it is, right?
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So, but I knew guys that were in there that, they didn't have a ton of money or a ton of resources, but they were made to buy their very expensive Class A uniforms, and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
why doesn't a volunteer department do a fundraiser just to buy new members Class A's?
Right.
Like, that shows so much appreciation for the work. Instead of saying, "What have you done for me today?" This is
Hmm.
like, "Look, this is appreciation for what you've done." So those are just my thoughts.
No, I love it. That's there and there is slowly becoming a culture shift, where we are seeing it through some natural attrition, and you're going to. The biggest thing and my biggest fear from what I see is mentorship. It's big in the fire service, but sometimes, you were fortunate. I know I was fortunate to have, some amazing mentors in my life. However, depending upon where somebody might come from, the person that they see as their mentor could be somebody with this old style mentality. So all they're going to run into is just wash, rinse, repeat of, so now instead of having a 50-year vet that's got this bad attitude, now you have, a 50-day, newbie that's like, well, that's how he always did it. So that's how I should probably do it myself. And it's like, no. So that's the culture shift is happening for sure. There's definitely a lot of different platforms and in groups and pages and individuals that are of like-minded that are really starting to, we're starting to get up and climb up into the society and get our message out there through social media. And truthfully speaking, it's become such a powerful tool to get our messages out to individuals is through social media. I mean, I never would have met. I never would have known of such an amazing program that that existed if it wasn't for, the
Social
first
media.
person that sent. Yeah, I mean, the first person that sent it to me was Shawnee, my Shawnee. So we're laying in bed and she's doom scrolling. She quite literally grabs her phone and she hands it to me. She was like this. She goes, "Watch this," and it was your mug, and I'm like, man, this guy's got it. And then within the next probably week, a ton of followers like, "Hey, look at this, JP, look at this." And I'm like, "This is great." And I'm like, "Well, we gotta hit the message button." And, you know, I'm super fortunate to have gotten you on the show, and we've had I mean, possibly one of the quickest 55 almost hour long conversation I've had with a guest so far. I have, I could go on forever. I think for today, I mean, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on or anything like that before we call it a day?
Well, let's, a couple of things. Follow
Yeah,
me
please.
on that TikTok, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. I do it as personal, but I also do it for the Trauma Survivors Foundation. Go to me, Dennis Carradin, Carradin, or go to the Trauma Survivors Foundation and watch it. All of my videos are meant for education,
Mhm.
also for mental awareness. I don't I do fun ones every day. I did one, the other week about just funny stories in EMS and, whatever it is. And I like having fun. And every now and then I'm
Oh,
going to tell
yeah.
you a story about my 4-year-old who is freaking hilarious. She, I had posted something the other day about, I yell up, I said, Deanna, are you sleeping? And she goes, yep. And then I put Morgan Freeman says, and Deanna, in fact, was not sleeping. So so I would say follow us, get on there and follow us. If
Yes.
there's questions, please, I always have the time. This is what, and I love this. I love the podcast. You reached out and I immediately said, all right, let's go get you to my manager, Jen, because she is
Yeah.
more of my brain than my brain. Like my brain is a bag of monkeys chasing around a bag of ferrets most of the time because I'm everywhere, right? But Jen's like, "Okay, this is what you have. Here's the link, da da da, and let's go." And I'm like, "This is." But I am always honored and humbled with questions. Yeah, it never stops. I want to be able to tell people like, "Look, you're going to be okay." And no matter what you do in this service or in this world, you can be okay. You have a lot of choices to make. And I would say this in that parting, outside of following us on the interwebs, you know, remember, the volunteer world is still noble. It is still functional. The
Hmm.
first responder world is one of the most amazing jobs anybody will have. I'll tell you this, if you wanna see a raw deal, if you wanna see something that is going to put you in its own perspective of certain things, watch the movie Code 3.
Okay. Yep.
If you have not watched this yet, and any of your viewers that have not watched this movie, it will knock you to your knees, because it was depicted so well of how paramedics view the world. But the message is, when people are saying it's a burnout paramedic, it's horrible. No, it's also about how we thrive
Mm.
in chaos. There's a thing
Yeah.
in there saying that I'm alive while you're almost dead. And it's just like, oh, this is good.
Yeah. 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 Oh.
So
Ooh.
my thought to it is, hey, watch it, know what you're getting into, but understand you're never alone. You always have somebody. And if need be, I'll give you a call at 3 o'clock in the morning while I'm watching SpongeBob with a 4-year-old that's refusing to sleep.
Well said. I love it. Awesome. Well, honestly, thank you so much, Dennis, for hopping on with us today. It was an honor to get you on. Um, for both of our followers, yes, please like, share, follow both pages. Dennis has got some amazing stuff out there, guys. If you like the passionate leader stuff, you're going to absolutely love Dennis's stuff because he hits the nail on the head and he's got the information and facts to back it up. Thank you for spending time with us today on the Passionate Leader podcast. If something today hit home, don't just sit with it, share it. Follow the Passionate Leader across all platforms, like I said. And if you want to become part of a deeper conversation, every Sunday night at 8 o'clock on Eastern Standard Time, rather, on TikTok, we go live with our kitchen table talks. That's the place where leadership meets the kitchen table and real talk fuels real change. We're on Discord, and our website now has merchandise if people want to support the growth of the Passionate Leader platform. If you believe in what we're building, consider supporting us on Patreon. Your support keeps the conversations going and helps us bring leaders to the table. More importantly, everybody, be the kind of leader everybody else is praying for. And no matter what comes your way, remember this: lead with passion, serve with humility, and leave no place for bottom feeders. Until we meet again next time, guys, stay safe.